Grant Whitmore didn't just kick Maya Carter's crutch out from under her. He planted his expensive shoe on the carbon fiber shaft and pressed until it snapped. The sound cut across the rain-soaked campus like a gunshot. Maya fell hard. One crutch skidded beneath a bench. The other remained trapped under Grant's heel, while his friends laughed and filmed her struggling in the mud. "Relax," Grant said, dropping $200 bills beside her. "Buy another one." He had no idea Maya had worked night shifts for 8 months to afford those crutches. Or that without them, she could not reach her laboratory, keep her scholarship, or protect the future she had fought to rebuild after the crash that killed her father. Dozens of students watched. Not one moved. Then an older biker in a weathered jacket stepped off the sidewalk. Daniel Gray Mercer looked at Maya, then at the broken crutch, and something in his face changed. By the next morning, Grant's powerful family would make Maya look like the criminal. But first, Gray bent down and asked the question everyone else had avoided. "Are you hurt?" Maya tried to answer, but pain stole the air from her lungs. Her left hip burned where it had struck the pavement. Rainwater soaked through her jeans, carrying dirt into her palms as she attempted to push herself upright. Her damaged leg trembled beneath her, unable to support her weight. Around her, students slowed down. Some stared. One young man raised his phone, then lowered it when Maya looked toward him. 2 women whispered to each other before hurrying away. A professor paused beneath an umbrella, studied the broken crutch, and continued toward the administration building. Nobody wanted to become involved. Grant and his friends were already disappearing across the courtyard, still laughing as though they had performed a harmless prank. The $200 bills he had thrown beside Maya were turning soft in a muddy puddle. He believed money could replace what he had destroyed. But the crutches had cost more than $1,800. Insurance had refused to cover the lightweight carbon fiber model, calling it an unnecessary upgrade. Maya had worked 5 nights a week at a 24-hour grocery store while carrying a full course load to pay for them herself. For 8 months, she had stocked shelves from midnight until dawn, then crossed town for morning lectures. She had skipped meals, repaired the same worn shoes with glue, and told her mother she was doing fine. Those crutches were not a luxury. They were the reason she could move safely between classes without exhausting her injured leg. They allowed her to stand beside a laboratory table, use both hands when necessary, and complete the biomedical engineering program she had nearly abandoned after the accident. Now one lay several feet away. The other was split beneath the handle, its carbon shaft crushed where Grant had stepped on it. Maya reached toward the nearest piece, but her fingers stopped short. She could not crawl after it without dragging her weakened leg across the pavement. "Could someone please hand me my phone?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but several people heard it. No one answered. A student wearing a red backpack looked directly at the phone near the bench. Fear crossed her face. She glanced toward the building where Grant had gone, then turned away. That hurt more than the fall. Maya lowered her eyes, fighting tears as the crowd dissolved around her. She had spent years proving she was capable of standing on her own. Grant had needed only seconds to put her on the ground, and everyone else had silently agreed to leave her there. Everyone except the stranger now kneeling beside her. Gray placed one hand on the pavement beside Maya, careful not to touch her without permission. "Don't move yet," he said. "Tell me where it hurts." "My hip, but I don't think anything's broken." He retrieved her phone and placed it in her hand. Then he removed his leather jacket, folded it, and slid it beneath her injured leg to keep it from resting against the cold pavement. "My name is Daniel Mercer," he said. "Most people call me Gray. May I help you sit up?" Maya nodded. Gray supported her back while she pushed against the ground. He moved slowly, stopping whenever pain tightened her face. Once she was seated against the bench, he collected both pieces of the broken crutch. He examined the crushed carbon shaft, then photographed the damage, the muddy bills, and the marks Grant's shoe had left on the material. Across the courtyard, Grant glanced back. Gray rose but did not follow him. "You forgot your money," he called. Several students stopped walking. Grant turned with an amused smile. "She needs it more than I do." Gray picked up the soaked bills and held them where everyone could see. "This isn't payment," he said. "It's evidence that you knew you destroyed something valuable." Grant's smile weakened. "You don't know what happened. I know she was on the ground while you walked away." For a moment, Grant appeared ready to return. Then one of his friends pulled at his sleeve, and the 3 of them disappeared inside the student center. Gray placed the wet bills in a clean envelope from his saddlebag. He wrapped the broken crutch pieces separately and wrote the time and location across the paper. Maya watched him with confusion. "Why are you doing all this?" "Because tomorrow he'll tell a different story." Her silence confirmed that she already knew he was right. Gray called campus medical services and waited beside her until an employee arrived with a wheelchair. When the woman asked what had happened, Maya looked toward the student center and hesitated. "I fell," she whispered. Gray studied her face. "You didn't fall." Maya gripped her phone. "Grant's father funds the engineering building. Complaints about him have a way of disappearing." "Complaints?" Gray repeated. Maya immediately looked away. That single word had revealed more than she intended. Grant had humiliated her before, and somewhere inside this university, someone had already helped him escape the consequences. The campus clinic found no fracture, but Maya's hip was badly bruised. Without 2 working crutches, she could not safely return to her dorm, so Gray offered to drive her home. His motorcycle remained in the campus lot while a friend from the Iron Harbor Riders arrived with Gray's pickup and agreed to take the bike back to their garage. Maya gave Gray an address in a working-class neighborhood on Portland's east side. When they arrived, Linda Carter opened the front door wearing pale blue hospital scrubs. Her tired smile vanished when she saw her daughter in a wheelchair. "What happened?" "I'm okay, Mom." Linda looked at the broken crutch pieces in Gray's hands. "No, you're not." Inside, Gray placed the wrapped pieces on the kitchen table, while Maya described the courtyard incident. She tried to make it sound smaller than it was, calling Grant's actions a stupid prank and insisting the university would handle everything. Linda did not believe her. "Was it the same boy?" she asked. Maya stared at the floor. Gray remained silent. Linda's eyes filled with anger. "The one who locked the accessible laboratory entrance? That was never proven." "And the anonymous complaint claiming you received special treatment?" Maya's voice hardened. "Mom, please." Gray finally understood. Grant had not chosen her at random. Over the previous semester, Maya had repeatedly outperformed him in a competitive biomedical design course. After a professor selected her prototype for a university showcase, Grant began making jokes about her disability. He imitated her walk in front of classmates, moved equipment beyond her reach, and once posted a photograph of her crutches with the caption, "Engineering's Diversity Project." Maya had reported the post. 2 days later, it disappeared. The student conduct office said there was insufficient evidence connecting it to Grant. A faculty advisor privately warned Maya that accusing the son of Charles Whitmore without proof could damage her professional reputation, so she stopped reporting him. Linda opened a kitchen drawer and removed a folder. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, and notes documenting every incident Maya had tried to forget. "I kept them because I knew this wasn't over," she said. Maya looked betrayed. "You promised not to interfere. I promised to respect your decision." "I never promised to help them erase what happened." Gray studied the records, then glanced at the shattered crutch. Years earlier, someone else had hidden humiliation behind the words "harmless joke." Someone else had insisted silence was safer than causing trouble, and Gray had believed him until it was too late. Gray returned the folder to the table. "My younger brother's name was Eli," he said. "He was 19 when a warehouse accident damaged his spine." Linda sat across from him. Maya remained quiet. Eli could still walk short distances, but every step hurt. The insurance company approved the cheapest braces they could find. They were heavy, poorly fitted, and they cut into his skin. He hated wearing them. Gray looked at Maya's broken crutch. People treated his equipment like it was an inconvenience. Strangers moved it out of the way. Coworkers joked that he was looking for sympathy. Once, someone hid one of his braces during a party and made him crawl across the room to find it. Maya's expression tightened. "I wanted to confront them," Gray continued. "Eli begged me not to. He said he could handle it. Said making trouble would only make people treat him differently." "So you stayed quiet," Maya said. Gray nodded. "I told myself I was respecting his choice." Months later, Eli's damaged braces failed while he was crossing the stairs outside his apartment. He fell and suffered internal injuries. By the time Gray reached the hospital, his brother was unconscious. Eli died 2 days later. The kitchen seemed smaller after those words. Gray removed an old photograph from his wallet. 2 young men stood beside a motorcycle. Gray was thinner then, with dark hair and an uncertain smile. Eli leaned against him, one hand gripping a metal forearm crutch. "He had been saving for better equipment," Gray said. 3 more paychecks. That was all he needed. Maya studied the photograph. "It wasn't your fault." "No. but I let him believe he had to endure everything alone. There's a difference between respecting someone's independence and using it as an excuse not to stand beside them. Linda reached for Maya's hand. For years, Maya had believed asking for help meant surrendering control. She had hidden Grant's harassment, worked through exhaustion, and protected her mother from every frightening detail. Each act had felt like strength. Now she wondered how much of it had really been fear. Gray placed Eli's photograph beside the broken carbon shaft. "I can't change what happened to my brother," he said, "but I can make sure what happened to you doesn't disappear." Maya looked at the evidence folder, then at her mother. What if the university protects Grant again? Then they'll have to do it in front of witnesses. Gray stood and returned the photograph to his wallet. "Tomorrow morning, you will not face them alone. I promise." But while Maya was deciding whether to believe him, the Whitmore family was already preparing to strike first. Gray left the Carter house shortly after midnight with copies of Linda's records and the broken crutch secured in his truck. He drove to a converted repair shop near the Willamette River. A faded iron anchor hung above the entrance, the symbol of the Iron Harbor Riders. Only 3 motorcycles remained outside, but light still burned in the back office. Ray Collins, the club's road captain, looked up when Gray entered. He listened without interrupting as Gray described Maya's fall, the students who had walked away, and the complaints that had vanished after reaching the university. Then Gray placed the broken crutch on the workbench. Ray's expression changed. "My daughter uses a chair," he said. "If someone did this to her, I'm not sure I could stay calm." "That's why I'm asking for calm," Gray replied. "No threats. No blocked doors. No one touches Grant or his family. We show up, stand where campus security allows us, and make sure Maya is seen." Ray examined the fractured carbon fiber. "You want witnesses. I want the university to know it cannot bury her in a private room." Ray picked up his phone and sent one message to the club's emergency group. Photographs of the crutch followed. Then Linda's timeline, with Maya's personal information removed. Replies appeared almost immediately. A retired teacher volunteered to contact a disability rights advocate. A former court clerk offered to organize the evidence. 2 riders who owned a medical supply shop began searching for replacement crutches in Maya's size. Gray stopped them from posting anything publicly. "This is Maya's story," he said. "She decides when it becomes public." By 2 in the morning, 70 riders had agreed to meet before sunrise. They would obey campus rules, remain silent, and leave if Maya asked them to. Gray checked the time. 6:30, he said. North entrance. Across Portland, Maya lay awake listening to rain strike her bedroom window. She did not know dozens of strangers were rearranging work shifts and family plans because they believed what happened to her mattered. She also did not know Charles Whitmore had already called the university president. By dawn, Grant's attorney had obtained the edited video from his friends, removed the moment he broke the crutch, and prepared a statement accusing Maya of provoking Grant and demanding money afterward. Gray was gathering witnesses. The Whitmores were manufacturing a version of the truth. At 7:12 the next morning, Maya received an email marked Urgent Mandatory Attendance. The Office of Student Conduct required her to appear at 8 o'clock for an immediate safety review. Until the meeting ended, she was forbidden from entering the engineering building or contacting Grant. Maya read the message twice. Grant had destroyed her crutch, yet the university was restricting her. Linda offered to go with her, but only enrolled students and approved advisors were permitted inside. Gray had not returned, and Maya could not wait. She borrowed an old aluminum crutch from a neighbor, adjusted it unevenly, and ordered a rideshare to campus. When she arrived at the administration building, Grant was already there. He sat beside Charles Whitmore in a tailored Navy suit. On Charles's other side was Rebecca Sloan, an attorney whose firm represented several major university donors. A leather folder rested open before her. Grant avoided Maya's eyes. Dr. Elaine Porter, Dean of Engineering, sat at the head of the conference table. 2 conduct officers were beside her, along with a university attorney and a silent note-taker. There was no disability advocate, no faculty advisor, no one Maya had chosen. Dr. Porter noticed the mismatched crutches. "Miss Carter, do you require medical assistance? I require the crutch Grant broke yesterday." Charles leaned toward his attorney, but Dr. Porter raised a hand. "This is a preliminary review," she said. "No conclusion has been reached. Then why was I banned from my laboratory before anyone heard my statement?" Dr. Porter's pause was brief, but Maya saw discomfort cross her face. Rebecca Sloan slid several printed pages across the table. According to Grant's statement, Maya had confronted him outside the student center over a design competition. She had insulted him, blocked his path with a crutch, then demanded $2,000 after falling during the argument. Maya stared at the document. That is a lie. We have video, Sloan replied. She placed a tablet on the table and pressed play. The recording began with Maya already on the ground. Grant stood several feet away while Maya, shocked and furious, shouted, "You'll pay for this!" The video showed Grant throwing money beside her. Then it ended. The broken crutch was visible, but the moment he crushed it had been removed. So had his laughter, his friends' taunts, and Maya asking bystanders for help. Sloan froze the final frame. "My client attempted to leave a hostile encounter," she said. "Miss." Carter responded with a financial demand. "I said he would pay for the damage," Maya replied. "Because he caused it. Can you prove that?" Maya looked toward Dr. Porter. "Campus cameras cover that courtyard." The dean's expression changed. The camera nearest the student center was reported offline during yesterday's storm. Charles folded his hands. "Then we should rely on the evidence that exists." Maya finally understood why the meeting had been scheduled so quickly. They were not there to discover what happened. They were there to make the edited video become the official truth. Rebecca Sloan pushed a second document across the table. "This can end today," she said. "Mr. Whitmore is willing to replace the damaged crutch and cover any reasonable medical expenses." Maya looked down at the first page. The agreement required her to withdraw every complaint against Grant, acknowledge that her fall resulted from a mutual confrontation, and promise never to discuss the incident publicly. It also prohibited her from sharing Linda's records or making future claims against the Whitmore family. "They want me to lie. They want a private resolution," Charles said. "One that protects everyone involved. Your son broke something I need to walk, and we are offering to replace it." Maya raised her eyes. After changing the video to make me look like an extortionist, Grant shifted in his seat. For the first time, Dr. Porter addressed him directly. "Did you or your friends edit that recording?" "My friend shortened it," Grant replied. "It was raining. The beginning wasn't clear. Was the original deleted?" "I don't know," Rebecca intervened. "Dean Porter, my client is not here to answer speculative questions." Maya almost laughed. Grant had arrived with his father, an attorney, and a carefully prepared accusation. Yet one question about the missing footage was suddenly unfair. Charles folded his hands. "Miss Carter, this university has invested greatly in you. Your scholarship, laboratory access, specialized accommodations, those opportunities depend upon professional conduct." There it was, not a threat spoken loudly enough to quote, just a reminder that powerful people could redefine everything Maya had earned as something they had given her. Dr. Porter's expression hardened. "Her accommodations are legal rights, not favors." Charles turned toward her. "Of course, I am speaking about judgment." Maya reread the agreement. At the bottom was a blank line for her signature. If she signed, she could return to class. She might receive new crutches before the end of the week. Her scholarship would be safe, and her mother would never have to face the cost of a legal fight. All she had to surrender was the truth. Maya placed the document back on the table. "No." Rebecca's voice remained calm. "You should understand the consequences before deciding. I understand them. You could lose access to your research. Then the university will have to explain why." Charles leaned forward. "Be careful. Accusations can follow a young engineer for years. So can evidence." Maya removed her phone and photographed the unsigned agreement before Rebecca could retrieve it. Dr. Porter looked toward the conduct officers. "Preserve that document in the case file. I also want a formal request sent for the original video and every version derived from it." Grant's face tightened. But the university attorney whispered to Dr. Porter, and the resistance in her eyes gave way to caution. "Pending review," she said. "Miss Carter will remain under interim suspension from the engineering facilities." Maya had refused to let the Whitmores purchase her silence. Now they were going to make her pay for that decision immediately. The meeting ended without anyone asking Grant to surrender his campus access. Maya, however, was escorted from the administration building by a conduct officer. Her temporary restrictions now included the biomedical laboratory, the prototype workshop, and the equipment room where her senior project was stored. Her access card had already been disabled. At the engineering entrance, Maya pressed it against the reader anyway. A red light flashed. Through the glass, She could see the workbench where she had spent 11 months developing an adjustable mobility brace for people with spinal injuries. Her scholarship required weekly research participation. If the suspension continued, she would miss the project review on Friday and risk losing her place in the program. Grant had broken one crutch. Now his family was reaching for her future. A housing administrator called before Maya left campus. Because Grant lived in the neighboring residence complex, the no-contact order required one student to be temporarily relocated. His attorney had argued that moving him would disrupt his academic schedule, so the university chose Maya. They offered her a guest room on the third floor of an older building, but its bathroom was not accessible, and its elevator had failed inspection twice that semester. Maya declined. By noon, Linda was helping her pack. Textbooks filled the first box. Laboratory notes filled the second. Maya wrapped her unfinished brace prototype in a sweatshirt, though she no longer knew whether she would be allowed to present it. Her roommate stood near the doorway, crying. "This isn't right." Maya forced a smile. Right doesn't seem to be part of the review process. After the last box was carried to Linda's car, Maya sat alone on the stripped mattress. The room looked unfamiliar without her drawings, tools, and photographs. She had fought through surgeries, grief, night shifts, and years of rehabilitation to reach this university. One edited video had pushed her outside it. Her phone remained silent. Gray had promised she would not face the university alone, but sunrise had passed hours ago. Maya wondered whether he had reconsidered her, whether Charles Whitmore had found some way to frighten him off. Back at her mother's house, Maya placed the unsigned agreement beside the broken crutch. "Maybe I should have signed it," she whispered. Linda crouched before her. "Do you believe that?" Maya could not answer. Then 3 firm knocks struck the front door. Maya looked toward the hallway. Someone had come, and whoever stood outside had arrived before she could surrender. Gray stood on the porch holding a pair of adjustable carbon fiber crutches. Behind him waited Ray Collins and a woman in a gray coat who introduced herself as Naomi Reed, a disability rights advocate. Gray's truck was parked at the curb. Maya's relief turned to anger. "You promised I wouldn't face them alone." "I know," Gray said. "By the time I learned about the meeting, you were already inside. The university refused to admit anyone you had not approved in advance. Then where were the riders, waiting 3 blocks from campus?" "I would not bring 70 people into your fight without your permission." Gray offered her the new crutches. They had been fitted using the measurements on her damaged pair, but Maya did not take them immediately. "I lost my lab access," she said. "They moved me out of the dorm. Grant is still walking like nothing happened." Naomi stepped forward. "The interim suspension can be challenged. The housing decision can too. But we need your authorization, and we need to know what you want." The question caught Maya off guard. Everyone else had told her what she should accept, what she might lose, or how quietly she needed to disappear. Naomi was the first person to ask what outcome belonged to her. Maya looked toward the kitchen table. The broken crutch, the edited agreement, and Linda's folder formed a record of every time fear had persuaded her to stay silent. "I want the suspension reviewed in public," she said. "I want the full video requested from every student who filmed it. And I want the university to explain why Grant's statement was treated as fact before mine was even heard." Gray nodded. "Then that is what we support." Maya took the new crutches and adjusted the cuffs around her forearms. Her hips still ached, but when she stood, the weight beneath her felt steady. Linda reached for her coat. "I'm coming." "So are we," Naomi said. Gray opened the door, but Maya stopped him. "The riders follow my lead. No threats. No one blocks anything. You have my word." Grant stood beneath the administration building's stone archway, with Charles Whitmore beside him. Rebecca Sloan was nowhere in sight, but 2 campus security officers waited near the doors. Grant glanced at Maya's new crutches. "That was fast," he said. "I guess your biker friend found a cheaper pair." Maya continued toward the steps. Gray walked beside her while Linda, Naomi, and Ray followed several paces behind. Charles descended 1 step and raised his hand as though welcoming them to a business meeting. "Miss Carter, returning with an unauthorized group, violates the spirit of the no-contact order." "The order says I cannot contact Grant," Maya replied. "It does not say I must come alone." Naomi presented her identification. "I am Maya Carter's advocate. The others are witnesses and supporters. We have requested an emergency review of her interim suspension and relocation." Charles barely looked at the document. "And what exactly is he?" His eyes settled on Gray's weathered jacket. Gray answered calmly. The man who saw your son leave her on the ground. Grant laughed. You saw the end of an argument. That doesn't make you a witness. I saw the broken crutch. I heard you admit she needed money to replace it. I preserved the bills you threw beside her. Grant's expression flickered. Charles stepped closer to Gray. You should be careful about inserting yourself into a dispute you do not understand. Appearing on campus in club colors could be interpreted as intimidation. Gray looked around the open courtyard. Students crossed between buildings. Security cameras faced the entrance. No one was blocking a door or threatening anyone. I came in one truck, he said. I'm standing where security told me I could stand. Charles smiled without warmth. Then perhaps you should return to that truck before your good intentions create legal consequences for your organization. Gray did not move. Maya climbed the first step and faced Charles directly. You keep speaking to everyone, except me. This situation has grown beyond you. No, your money made people treat it that way. But Grant broke my crutch. The university punished me before investigating him. I am the person challenging that decision. Students had begun slowing nearby. Grant lowered his voice. Do you really think dragging a biker club here will make anyone believe you? Maya held his gaze. I think you are afraid of what people will believe when they see the part of the video you removed. Grant's confidence vanished for half a second. Then a low vibration rolled through the pavement. Everyone turned toward the north entrance. The sound multiplied dozens of engines approaching in disciplined formation, growing louder without a single horn or shout. Charles looked at Gray. Gray remained perfectly still. He had not come alone. The first motorcycle entered the courtyard at walking speed. Then came another, and another. The Iron Harbor riders moved in two disciplined lines, following a campus security vehicle toward a designated visitor lot. There were no horns, raised fists, or shouted threats. Only the steady sound of 70 engines echoing between the buildings. One by one, the riders parked inside marked spaces and switched off their motorcycles. The silence that followed felt more powerful than the noise. Ray Collins stepped forward first. He handed a security supervisor a list containing every rider's name and confirmed that the group would remain inside the approved public area. No one approached Grant. No one blocked an entrance. A clear path remained open across the courtyard. 70 riders simply stood beside their motorcycles and waited. They were not the army Charles Whitmore expected. Among them were nurses, mechanics, teachers, veterans, parents, and small business owners. Several wore medical braces. One man removed his helmet to reveal a hearing device. A woman near the front steadied herself with a prosthetic leg. They had come because they understood what it meant when someone treated another person's independence like a toy. Maya stared at them. You contacted all these people? Gray shook his head. I contacted Ray. The rest made their own decision. The answer mattered. Gray had not summoned an angry mob to rescue her. Each person had learned what happened and decided that silence would make them part of it. Charles turned to the security supervisor. This is intimidation. Remove them. The supervisor looked across the orderly rows. They are in a public area, sir. They have followed every instruction. This is a university, not a motorcycle rally. Naomi stepped beside Maya. Then perhaps the university should stop treating peaceful witnesses as a greater threat than the destruction of a disabled student's mobility equipment. Several students began recording. Others gathered along the courtyard edges. Some recognized Maya from the engineering program. Whispers spread about her suspension, the inaccessible room offered during her relocation, and the video that began only after she was already on the ground. Grant looked toward the administration doors. For the first time, he seemed to realize that his family could control a private meeting, but not every person who witnessed what followed. Maya moved to the front of the gathering. These people are not here to threaten anyone, she said. They are here because yesterday, dozens of students saw me on the ground and walked away. Today, no one gets to pretend they did not see me. The engines were silent. The riders remained still. Their presence had forced the university to look, but numbers could not replace evidence. Dr. Elaine Porter emerged from the administration building with the university president and 3 additional security officers. She surveyed the riders, the students filming from the courtyard, and Maya standing at the center of it all. This gathering must end, Dr. Porter announced. The university cannot conduct a fair review under public pressure. Maya stepped forward on her new crutches. The first review happened behind closed doors with Grant's father and attorney in the room. I had no advocate, and you suspended me using a video that had obviously been edited. Dr. Porter lowered her voice. Miss Carter, I understand your frustration. This is not frustration. I was removed from my laboratory and forced out of accessible housing while the person who broke my crutch faced no restrictions. Students near the entrance began whispering. The university president approached Maya. What are you asking us to do? I want an emergency review in a room open to student representatives, disability services, and any witnesses willing to testify. I want the original video requested from every device that recorded the incident. Until that evidence is examined, my suspension and relocation should be reversed. Charles Whitmore pushed through the gathering. You cannot turn a disciplinary matter into a public spectacle simply because you dislike the preliminary decision. Maya faced him. Your attorney showed a manipulated recording and called it evidence. You threatened my education if I refused to sign away my right to speak. This became public the moment your son humiliated me in front of an entire courtyard. Grant remained near the doors, staring at the phones pointed toward him. Dr. Porter looked at the growing crowd. Maya could see the conflict on her face. The dean knew the process had been unfair, but admitting it would expose how easily donor influence had entered the room. Naomi handed her a written appeal. You have the authority to pause the interim measures, she said. No policy requires Maya to suffer the greater burden merely because the other student has powerful representation. Dr. Porter read the first page. Then she turned toward Charles. The university will conduct an emergency evidentiary review at 10 o'clock. Student government and disability services may each appoint an observer. Charles's face hardened. That would be highly irregular. So was presenting edited footage without disclosing that it had been altered, Dr. Porter replied. Maya exhaled, but she did not mistake a hearing for victory. Without the missing footage, Grant could still claim the truth had begun after she hit the ground. Then movement stirred at the edge of the crowd. A frightened young woman wearing a red backpack stepped forward, gripping a phone in both hands. The young woman stopped several feet from Maya. My name is Natalie Brooks, she said, her voice trembling. I recorded what happened yesterday. Grant stared at the red backpack. Natalie was the student who had looked at Maya's phone and walked away. I should have helped you, she continued. I saw your phone near the bench. I heard you asking for it, but Grant looked at me, and I got scared. Maya remembered the fear on her face. Do you still have the recording? Natalie unlocked her phone. The full version. I never sent it to Grant. Charles stepped between her and Dr. Porter. If this student recorded a private conversation without consent, the university should consult legal counsel before accepting anything. It happened in a public courtyard, Naomi replied. Doctor, Porter held out her hand. Miss Brooks, may I see it? Natalie hesitated. Grant's attention remained fixed on her. He texted me last night, she said. He told me deleting the video would protect everyone. Then one of his friends sent me the clip they gave the university. She opened both files. The edited recording lasted 23 seconds. Natalie's original video lasted 2 minutes and 48 seconds. In the first frame, Maya stood beside the bench while Grant blocked her path. His friends laughed as he mocked the way she walked. Maya tried to move around him, but Grant grabbed one crutch and pulled it from beneath her arm. The recording showed Maya losing her balance. It showed Grant placing his shoe on the carbon fiber shaft. It captured the sharp crack as he pressed down. Then Maya fell. No argument had come before it. No crutch had blocked Grant's path. No demand for money had been made until after he destroyed the equipment. Natalie lowered the phone. I watched them make her look guilty, she said. Yesterday I told myself staying quiet would keep me out of trouble. But it didn't keep me out of anything. It only helped them. Maya's anger softened. You came back, she said. Natalie nodded, fighting tears. I'm sorry it took me this long. Dr. Porter instructed a conduct officer to copy the original file, preserve its metadata, and obtain a signed statement from Natalie. She also ordered staff to identify every student visible in the recording. Grant turned toward his father. Charles no longer looked confident, but he was not finished. A video without context proves very little, he said. My son may have acted badly, but miss. Carter's behavior before the recording remains undocumented. Natalie swallowed. Then she opened another file. I started recording 3 minutes earlier. For the first time, Charles Whitmore realized the evidence might expose more than his son's violence. He immediately reached for his phone and made one final move. Charles stepped away from the crowd and called the chairman of the university's board of trustees. He spoke quietly at first. Then his voice sharpened. $20 million, he said. That is what my family has committed to this institution. If the university allows a manufactured spectacle to destroy my son's future, every remaining dollar disappears. The university president heard him. So did 3 students recording nearby. Charles ended the call and returned with the confidence of a man who believed money had restored the natural order. The board chairman expects this matter to be handled privately, he announced. Dr. Porter looked at him. You threatened to withdraw a donation during an active disciplinary review? I reminded him that institutions survive through responsible partnerships. No, Maya said. You reminded everyone what this was really about. At 10 o'clock, the emergency hearing was moved to the university auditorium. Student government representatives sat in the front row beside disability services, faculty observers, and legal counsel. The Iron Harbor riders remained outside. They had come to make sure Maya was seen not to decide the outcome for her. Natalie's full recording appeared on the auditorium screen. The earlier footage showed Grant following Maya from the engineering building after learning her design had been selected for the regional showcase. You think they chose you because you're better? Grant said in the video. You're a scholarship story. They need someone like you in the photographs. Maya continued walking. Grant moved in front of her. When she asked him to let her pass, he looked toward his friends and smiled. Make me. The next recording began without a break. Everyone watched Grant seize the crutch, tear it from Maya's arm, and crush it under his shoe. The crack echoed through the auditorium. Then came Maya's fall, Grant's laughter, the money landing in the mud, and the crowd walking away. No one spoke when the screen went dark. The university's digital forensics technician confirmed that Natalie's files were continuous and unaltered. Grant's version had been exported after more than 2 minutes were removed from the beginning. Dr. Porter turned toward Grant. Did you knowingly submit an edited recording as a complete account of the incident? Grant looked at his father. Charles answered for him. My son relied on a file provided by another student. I asked Grant. Grant's face had gone pale. I didn't think the missing part mattered. Maya stared at him. You removed the only part that showed what you did. Charles stood. This has gone far enough. Grant made a terrible mistake, but destroying his education will not repair Miss Carter's crutch. Maya rose carefully. This was never only about the crutch. She looked across the auditorium. It was about every person who saw what happened and decided Grant was too powerful to confront. It was about a university that treated his accusation as urgent, but treated my evidence as inconvenient. It was about being told that my scholarship, my laboratory, and even my right to move safely through campus were favors I could lose if I refused to stay quiet. Her voice trembled, but she continued. I am not asking anyone to ruin Grant's life. I am asking you to stop ruining mine to protect him. Dr. Porter closed the case file. Effective immediately. Maya Carter's interim suspension is rescinded. Her laboratory access and accessible housing will be restored today. Her missed research time will not affect her scholarship or academic standing. Maya exhaled. Doctor. Porter then ordered a formal disciplinary investigation into Grant's assault, harassment, evidence manipulation, and retaliation. The university would also review the conduct office's handling of Maya's earlier complaints and examine whether donor influence had compromised the process. Charles reached for his briefcase. This university will regret humiliating my family. The president faced him. Your donation does not purchase control over our findings. Campus security asked Grant to surrender his access card pending the investigation. For most of his life, Grant Whitmore had won because money entered the room before the truth did. This time, money could not save him. 3 weeks after the emergency hearing, the university released its findings. The investigators confirmed that Grant had harassed Maya for months, deliberately destroyed her crutch, submitted altered evidence, and contacted witnesses in an attempt to erase the original recordings. They also found that 2 conduct officers had ignored Maya's earlier complaints after receiving calls from Charles Whitmore's office. Grant was expelled. His name disappeared from the engineering program. His campus access was permanently revoked, and the Regional Design Committee removed him from every university-sponsored competition. The conduct director was placed on administrative leave while an independent panel reviewed cases involving major donors. Charles threatened lawsuits against the university, Natalie, and even Gray. None were filed. Natalie's metadata, the witnesses' statements, and Charles's recorded donation threat left him with no private version of events he could safely defend in public. The district attorney charged Grant with misdemeanor assault, destruction of property, and witness interference. His attorney negotiated a plea that spared him jail, but not consequences. Grant received 18 months of probation, full restitution for Maya's medical expenses and damaged equipment, mandatory counseling, and 400 hours of community service. At sentencing, Charles offered to pay every fine immediately. The judge looked past him and addressed Grant. "Your father's money can repay a bill," she said. "It cannot perform your accountability." She assigned Grant to Harbor Veterans Resource Center, where injured veterans received meals, transportation, rehabilitation support, and repairs for wheelchairs, braces, and crutches. Grant's face tightened when he heard the placement. Maya watched from the back of the courtroom beside Linda and Gray. She felt no triumph. Expulsion would not return the nights she had lost, and probation could not erase the moment she lay in the rain while strangers walked past. But consequences had finally reached someone who believed they were meant only for other people. The university restored Maya's housing and laboratory access, extended her project deadline, and created an independent reporting channel for students whose complaints involved donors or administrators. It was not a perfect repair, it was a beginning. Grant reported to the Veterans Center the following Monday wearing clean shoes and an expression of practiced indifference. A supervisor handed him work gloves and led him past a room filled with damaged mobility equipment. "You'll start there," she said. Grant looked through the doorway at rows of cracked canes, bent wheelchair frames, and worn forearm crutches. For the first time, he had been sent somewhere money could not prevent him from seeing what broken equipment cost the people who depended on it. Grant's first assignment was to sort damaged mobility equipment into 3 groups: repairable, reusable for parts, and beyond recovery. He treated the work like punishment. He lifted each cane or brace with 2 fingers, glanced at it, then dropped it into a bin. Bent wheelchairs went to one side. Cracked crutches went to another. He never asked who had used them or why they mattered. Near noon, an older veteran entered the workshop pushing a wheelchair with one damaged wheel. His name was Samuel Reyes. He had lost his left leg in Afghanistan and now worked as a high school history teacher. The chair was not his only means of movement, but nerve damage made his prosthetic too painful to wear for long periods. "I need it repaired before tomorrow," Samuel told the supervisor. "My daughter is graduating." The supervisor inspected the wheel. "The bearing assembly is broken. We don't have the replacement part." Grant continued sorting equipment. Samuel looked at the rows of discarded chairs. "Can you take one from another wheel?" "Possibly," the supervisor said. "But it could take hours to find a compatible model." Grant picked up a cracked aluminum crutch and threw it into the scrap bin. The sound made Samuel turn. "Careful with that." "It's already broken," Grant replied. "So was my first chair. Someone repaired it, and I used it for 6 more years." Grant shrugged. "This stuff gets replaced eventually." Samuel studied him. "Do you know what happens while people wait?" Grant said nothing. "They miss work. They cancel medical appointments. They stay home while their families go somewhere without them. A broken wheel looks small until it becomes the reason someone cannot watch his daughter cross a stage." The words settled heavily in the room. Grant glanced at Samuel's wheelchair. For the first time, he noticed the faded photograph taped beneath one armrest. Samuel stood beside a teenage girl wearing a graduation gown. Written across the bottom were the words, "Save me a seat, Dad." The supervisor handed Grant a list of compatible models. "Check every chair in the storage room." Grant wanted to protest. The room contained more than 80 damaged wheelchairs, and most were covered in dust. But Samuel was still waiting near the doorway, so Grant began searching. He removed wheels, compared serial numbers, measured bearings, and carried heavy frames across the workshop. 2 hours passed, then 3. Finally, he found an older chair with a matching assembly. The part was rusted but usable. Under the supervisor's direction, Grant cleaned it, replaced the damaged bearings, and installed it on Samuel's chair. His hands became black with grease. A sharp edge cut his thumb, but he kept working until the wheel turned smoothly. Samuel tested the chair across the workshop. "It works." Grant wiped his hands on a rag. "You'll make it to the graduation." Samuel nodded. Because someone decided my problem was worth his time. Grant looked toward the scrap bin where he had thrown the broken crutch. For weeks, he had told himself Maya had overreacted. It was only a piece of equipment. His father had offered to replace it. No permanent damage had been done. Now he understood what he had refused to see. He had not merely broken an object. He had taken away Maya's ability to choose where she could go and then laughed while she lay helpless in the rain. The next morning, Grant arrived at the Veterans Center 20 minutes early. No one praised him. The supervisor simply handed him a clipboard and pointed toward the equipment he had carelessly sorted the day before. Do it again. Grant pulled every item from the bins. This time he inspected each wheelchair, cane, brace, and crutch carefully. He checked serial numbers, tested joints, and asked whether cracked parts could be replaced before labeling anything beyond repair. The aluminum crutch he had thrown away was still in the scrap bin. Its lower tube was bent, and the hand grip had nearly separated from the frame. Grant carried it to the repair table. Can this be saved? The supervisor examined it. Maybe. Why? Grant looked at the damaged handle. Because someone might be waiting for it. That did not erase what he had done to Maya. It did not make him kind. It only meant the lesson had finally reached a place inside him where excuses could no longer silence it. Over the following weeks, Grant learned how to replace worn wheelchair bearings, reshape bent aluminum, disinfect donated braces, and measure forearm crutches for different users. He also learned how expensive independence could be. One custom wheelchair cost more than some families earned in a year. Insurance could take months to approve a replacement. A properly fitted prosthetic required adjustments that many veterans had to travel hundreds of miles to receive. Even a single carbon fiber crutch could cost hundreds of dollars. Grant remembered dropping the muddy bills beside Maya. At the time, he had believed money made the damage disappear. Now he understood that replacement was never as simple as buying another object. Maya's crutches had been measured for her body, her balance, and the weakness in her injured leg. Breaking one had placed her at risk of another fall, and he had known that. That realization followed him home each night. Charles refused to discuss it. The university wanted a sacrifice, he said during one dinner. They chose you because protecting their reputation was cheaper than fighting for the truth. Grant stared at his father. The video was the truth. Charles set down his glass. You made a mistake. I edited the evidence. Your friends edited it. I told them what to remove. Silence settled over the dining room. For the first time, Grant saw that his father was not trying to help him understand what he had done. Charles was teaching him how to survive consequences without accepting responsibility. Grant had spent his entire life learning that lesson. He stood and left the table. At the Veterans Center the following afternoon, the supervisor assigned him a pair of damaged forearm crutches. They were carbon fiber, the same model Maya had used. One shaft had split beneath the handle. Grant froze. He could almost hear the crack in the courtyard again. These belong to a college student, the supervisor said. Not Maya, a young veteran studying nursing. His insurance denied the replacement because they claimed the damage was cosmetic. Grant ran his thumb near the fracture. It could collapse. That is what we told them. How long has he been waiting? 6 weeks. Grant spent the rest of his shift repairing the shaft under the center technician's supervision. He reinforced the damaged section, replaced the grip, adjusted the cuff, and tested the crutch repeatedly beneath more weight than its owner would place on it. When he finished, he did not feel proud. He felt ashamed that it had taken Maya's suffering to make him care about someone else's. Before leaving, Grant asked the supervisor for a sheet of paper. He began writing an apology. He admitted following Maya from the engineering building. He described taking her crutch, breaking it deliberately, and editing the video because he was afraid of being punished. He acknowledged that his father's influence had encouraged him to believe Maya's future mattered less than his reputation. Then he wrote, I hope you can forgive me. Grant stared at the sentence before crossing it out. Forgiveness was another thing he had no right to demand. He started again. You do not owe me a response. You do not owe me forgiveness. I only want to admit, without excuses, that what I did was cruel, and that every consequence I received was caused by my own choices. The supervisor read the letter. Are you planning to send this? I think I should. An apology can help the person you harmed, she said. But sometimes it only helps the person who feels guilty. Maya gets to decide whether she ever hears from you again. Grant folded the paper. What am I supposed to do with it? Keep changing. If she ever chooses to accept contact, you can give it to her then. Grant placed the letter inside his locker. At the end of his shift, a truck stopped outside the donation entrance. 2 men began unloading wheelchairs, walkers, and boxes of medical supplies. Grant recognized the leather jacket before he saw the man's face. Gray carried a pair of old metal forearm crutches through the doorway. A small engraved plate was attached to one shaft. In memory of Eli Mercer, Gray looked across the workshop and saw Grant standing beside the repaired carbon fiber crutches. Neither man moved. Grant had prepared himself to face Maya someday. He had not prepared to face the brother of someone whose suffering looked so much like hers. 20 minutes later, Maya stepped from Gray's truck outside the administration building. She had returned not to beg for access, but to challenge the process that had taken it from her. Then she saw Grant waiting at the top of the steps. Grant's first instinct was to leave. He reached for the clipboard beside him, pretending there was somewhere else he needed to be. But Gray had already placed Eli's crutches on the donation table. Their eyes met across the workshop. Gray's expression revealed no anger. Somehow, that made Grant feel worse. The supervisor stepped between them. "Mr. Mercer, thank you for bringing these. We'll inspect everything and prepare a donation receipt." "I don't need one," Gray said. He ran his fingers over the engraved plate. The metal crutches were scratched and worn. Newer equipment would have been lighter, but Eli had saved for months to buy them. After his death, Gray had kept them locked in a closet for nearly 12 years. Donating them had once felt like abandoning the last evidence that his brother had existed. Now he understood they could help someone else move forward. "Are they still usable?" Gray asked. The supervisor examined the cuffs and hand grips. "They'll need new padding, but the frames are solid." Grant stared at the scratches along the shafts. Each mark had come from a doorway, a staircase, or an ordinary day Eli had fought to live independently. Gray noticed the repaired carbon fiber crutches on Grant's workbench. "You fixed those?" Grant nodded. "Under supervision." Gray tested the reinforced shaft. "The repair looks strong." The words were not praise. They were simply true. Grant swallowed. "I know you probably don't want to hear anything from me. You're right." Grant lowered his eyes. Gray placed the crutch back on the table. "But wanting to speak and having something worth saying are different things. Which one is it?" Grant could have repeated the apology stored inside his locker. He had read it so many times that he knew every sentence. But standing before Gray, the words seemed polished and inadequate. "I broke Maya's crutch because I wanted to humiliate her," he said. "She was better than me and I couldn't stand it." Gray remained silent. "I told myself she only got attention because of her disability. But that wasn't true. I knew she worked harder than I did. I knew her design was better. Making fun of her was easier than admitting I was jealous. And the video? I told my friends what to remove. My father's attorney used it, but the lie was mine." Grant's voice tightened. "When Maya was on the ground, I knew she could have been seriously hurt. I still walked away." Gray looked toward Eli's crutches. "My brother spent years surrounded by people who treated his pain like an inconvenience. Some regretted it after he died. Their regret didn't bring him back." "I know. No, you don't." Grant did not argue. Gray stepped closer. "You repaired a few pieces of equipment. You worked several weeks without your father protecting you. That does not make you the victim of a difficult lesson. I'm not asking you to see me that way." "Then what are you asking?" Grant thought about the letter in his locker. "Nothing." The answer surprised both men. "Maya doesn't owe me forgiveness. You don't either. I just wanted someone to hear me admit what I did without my father changing the story." Gray studied him for a long moment. "That's the first honest thing I've heard from you." Grant's eyes moved to the engraved plate. "Was Eli your brother?" "Yes." "Did he use those every day?" "Until the braces he depended on failed." Grant looked at Gray. "Did someone damage them?" "People mistreated them, hid them, threw them around. Eli kept saying it was harmless." Gray's jaw tightened. When he needed better equipment, insurance delays and money stood in the way. He died before he could replace what had failed. Grant glanced at his own hands, still stained from repairing the carbon fiber shaft. "I'm sorry. Don't use my brother to make your apology feel heavier." Grant flinched. Gray continued, "Eli is not a lesson written for you. Maya is not a lesson either. They are people. Their suffering does not exist to improve your character." Grant absorbed the words without looking away. "What should I do?" "You already know." Gray pointed toward the rows of damaged equipment. "Do the work when no one is watching. Tell the truth when it costs you something. And the next time your father uses money to bury what happened, stop him instead of hiding behind him." Before Grant could answer, the side door opened. Charles Whitmore entered the workshop with a court document in one hand and anger burning across his face. Grant stiffened. His father was not there to see whether he had changed. He had come to make sure the truth never reached Maya. Charles Whitmore crossed the workshop as though he owned the building. His expensive coat was wet from the rain. In one hand, he carried a petition bearing the seal of the county court. In the other was a prepared affidavit awaiting Grant's signature. He stopped beside Eli's donated crutches. "You need to leave," Charles told Gray. Gray did not move. "I'm delivering equipment. You approached my son at the location of his court-ordered service. That is harassment." The supervisor stepped forward. "Mr. Mercer scheduled this donation last week. Grant was not informed he would be here." Charles held out the court document. "My attorney is seeking an emergency protective order against Mr. Mercer and the Iron Harbor Riders. Until the court reviews it, any further contact with Grant will be documented." Gray read the first page. The petition accused him of organizing an armed intimidation campaign at the university, following Grant to the Veterans Center and pressuring him into making statements about Maya's case. None of it was true, but truth was not Charles's immediate goal. The accusation alone could force Gray to hire an attorney, damage the motorcycle club's reputation, and frighten the Veterans Center into banning him. Grant looked at the affidavit in his father's hand. "What do you want me to sign?" Charles placed it on the workbench. The statement claimed Gray had confronted Grant without permission, described Maya's injuries in exaggerated terms, and threatened to ruin the Whitmore family unless Grant confessed. It also claimed Grant's earlier admission about editing the video had been made under emotional pressure. Grant read the final paragraph twice. "If I sign this, you'll say Gray forced me to admit everything. I'll say an adult man with a personal vendetta cornered you while you were completing a court sentence. He didn't corner me. Grant, stop trying to turn your humiliation into a moral awakening." Gray's face remained still, but Grant saw his hand tighten beside Eli's crutches. Charles lowered his voice. "This man is using his dead brother to manipulate you. Maya used her disability to gain public sympathy. The university used you to protect itself. Everyone understands how influence works except you." Grant looked around the workshop. Wheelchairs waited for new bearings. Braces lay disassembled on repair tables. On a nearby shelf sat the carbon fiber crutches he had spent hours repairing for a veteran he had never met. A few months earlier, he would have signed without reading. His father would have called it strategy. His attorney would have called it protection. Grant would have called it the truth because powerful people had written it for him. He pushed the affidavit back. "I'm not signing." Charles stared at him. "You don't understand what refusing means. I understand exactly what it means. Your appeal is still pending. We can challenge the expulsion. We can reduce your probation conditions. I can rebuild your academic record, but not if you continue confessing to anyone who walks through that door." "I'm not appealing." Charles's expression changed. Grant had seen his father angry before, but this was different. Anger came when Charles temporarily lost control. Fear appeared when he realized control might not return. "You are throwing away your future over one mistake." It wasn't one mistake. Grant's voice was quiet. "I followed Maya because her design beat mine. I mocked her disability. I took something she needed to stand. I broke it while my friends laughed. Then I left her in the rain, ordered the video edited, and watched you accuse her of lying. I was protecting you. You were teaching me how to become you." The workshop fell silent. Charles stepped closer. "Everything you have came from me. That's the problem." Grant pointed toward the false affidavit. "You paid people to clean up every cruel thing I did. Then you called the absence of consequences proof that I had done nothing wrong." Charles grabbed Grant's arm. "You will not destroy this family because you feel guilty." The supervisor immediately intervened. "Take your hand off him." Charles released Grant, straightened his coat, and looked toward Gray. "You think you've changed my son?" Gray shook his head. "I didn't change him. Then why is he repeating your words?" "Because they're true." Charles turned back to Grant. "If you refuse to sign, I will withdraw every form of support. No apartment, no legal team, no trust payments. You will leave my house tonight." Grant felt the threat land. For the first time in his life, losing his father's protection did not sound theoretical. It meant facing probation alone, finding work with an expulsion on his record, paying his own bills, living without the name that had opened every door before he reached it. His hand trembled. Charles noticed. "Come home," he said more softly. "We'll forget this happened." Grant looked at the affidavit. Then he tore it in half. Charles's face emptied of emotion. "You will regret that. I already regret the things I did because I knew you would protect me." Charles picked up the torn pages. Before leaving, he faced the center supervisor. "If my son discusses this case with Mr. Mercer again, your organization will be named in the petition. You may communicate through our attorney," she replied. Charles walked out without looking at Grant. The door closed behind him. Grant remained beside the workbench, breathing as though he had just stepped off the edge of something high. Gray reached for Eli's crutches. "You didn't have to lose everything today." "Yes, I did," Grant replied. "Otherwise, I would keep believing it belonged to me." Gray studied him but offered no forgiveness. Grant had finally told the truth when it cost him something. That did not erase the months when Maya had carried the cost instead. The supervisor asked whether he needed to call his probation officer. "Yes," Grant said, "and the university investigator." He walked to his locker and removed the apology letter. Beneath it was an old phone he had stopped using after the hearing. Grant turned it on. Messages from the night of the assault appeared one after another, conversations with his friends about cutting the video, instructions from Rebecca Sloane's office, and warnings from Charles never to describe the incident in writing. Then Grant opened a voice message recorded 12 minutes after Maya fell. His father's voice filled the quiet workshop. "Delete anything showing the crutch. Let the attorney decide what happened." Charles believed every copy had disappeared. He did not know his own son had saved one. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when Charles Whitmore arrived. He wore the same calm expression he had used at every university hearing, every donor dinner, every meeting where people had learned to nod before he finished speaking. His attorneys walked beside him. Cameras flashed. Questions rose from every direction. "Did you order your son to destroy evidence? Did you threaten Maya Carter's scholarship? Did you attempt to force Grant into signing a false statement?" Charles stopped only once. "This is a private family matter," he said. "Certain people have chosen to distort it for attention." Then he walked inside. Across the street, Maya stood beside Naomi. Gray waited a few steps behind them. Maya had not come to watch Charles suffer. She had spent too long allowing him to occupy space in her mind. But she wanted to be present for one thing. The truth would finally be spoken where money could not edit it. Inside the courtroom, Grant sat alone at the witness table. He no longer wore expensive jackets. His apartment was now a single room above an auto repair shop. He worked long hours at the Veterans Center, repaired damaged mobility equipment, and took evening classes at a community college. None of that erased what he had done. It only proved that he had stopped running from it. When the prosecutor asked whether he recognized the voice message recovered from his phone, Grant answered quietly, "Yes." The recording filled the courtroom. "Delete anything showing the crutch. Let the attorney decide what happened." Charles did not look at his son. The prosecutor displayed the messages next. Photographs of Maya's broken crutch. Instructions to collect every video. Messages from Rebecca Sloane's office explaining how to submit an edited recording without the original metadata. Then Charles's words appeared on the courtroom screen. "Her scholarship makes her vulnerable. The university will protect the donor relationship before it protects her." A silence spread through the room. For months, Maya had been called emotional, Grant had been called confused, Charles had called it protection. But there was no confusion in those messages. There was only a plan. The prosecutor turned to Grant. "Did your father tell you to alter the evidence?" "Yes." "Did he offer legal support and financial protection if you followed his instructions?" "Yes." "And did he threaten to remove that support if you refused to sign a false affidavit against Gray Mercer?" "Yes." Grant looked toward his father for the first time. "I made the choice to hurt Maya," he said. "That was mine. But my father taught me that consequences were things poor people faced. He taught me that if we had enough money, the truth could be changed." Charles finally turned toward him. "You are destroying your own life," he said. Grant's voice shook, but he did not look away. "No, I destroyed part of it when I hurt her. This is the first time I'm trying to live honestly." Outside the courthouse, Maya closed her eyes. She did not feel joy. She felt something quieter. The fear that had followed her since the courtyard began to loosen. Not because Charles had become powerless. Not because Grant had become good, but because neither man could decide what the truth was anymore. 3 weeks later, Charles Whitmore accepted a plea agreement. He was found guilty of obstruction, attempted evidence tampering, and coercion of a witness. Rebecca Sloane surrendered her law license while the state bar completed its investigation. The Whitmore Foundation lost its advisory role at the university, and every remaining donation agreement was suspended. The court ordered Charles to fund an independently managed accessibility program for students with disabilities. His name would not appear on it. When his attorney objected, saying the Whitmore family deserved recognition for its contribution, the judge looked directly at Charles. Restitution is not advertising. For the first time in his life, Charles was forced to give something without receiving power in return. Meanwhile, the Regional Engineering Showcase returned under a new name. There was no Whitmore Foundation logo on the stage, no donor portrait in the lobby. Only the university emblem and one sentence behind the podium. Innovation should restore dignity, not purchase influence. Maya stood backstage with her prototype brace in front of her. Her hands trembled as technicians attached sensors to the device. The brace had been designed for people whose legs retained movement but lacked stability. It could adjust to a person's balance, weight, and range of motion, giving them a chance to walk with less fear of falling. Linda sat in the front row beside Naomi. Gray was there too, quietly watching from the back. Grant was not. He had received an invitation but declined it. His message was short. This day belongs to Maya and her work. When Maya stepped onto the stage using her new carbon fiber crutches, the audience rose to its feet. For 1 second, she froze. The last time hundreds of people had watched her, she had been on the ground in the rain. This time, she lifted her head. The first person to test the brace was Daniel Kim, a nursing student and Army veteran. His damaged crutches had been repaired at the Veterans Center while his insurance appeal was still delayed. Maya secured the brace around his leg, adjusted the resistance, and stepped back. Daniel took one step, then another. The brace responded smoothly. Halfway across the platform, Daniel stopped. He slowly lifted both crutches off the floor. The auditorium became completely silent. Then, Daniel took another step without them. The brace locked gently beneath his knee and held him upright. He laughed. It was not cruel laughter. It was the sound of someone realizing that his body had not taken everything from him. Maya covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. The audience erupted. Her design won the showcase's highest engineering award. 3 rehabilitation hospitals offered funding for clinical testing. Maya accepted only after adding one condition. The first production models would go to people trapped in insurance appeals people, who could not afford to wait for independence. 2 weeks later, Maya visited the Veterans Center. Grant was at a repair table, replacing the grip on an old forearm crutch. He looked up when she entered, then immediately set down his tools. "I read your letter," Maya said. Grant nodded. "I meant every word. I believe you." Relief flickered across his face. Then Maya continued. "I'm not ready to forgive you." Grant lowered his eyes. "You don't have to. I may never be. I understand." Maya placed a folder on the repair table. Inside were drawings for a low-cost adjustable crutch. Every section could be replaced separately, so one broken part would not force someone to lose the entire device. "The center wants to test this," she said. "They need people who understand repairs." Grant looked at the drawings. "Why are you showing me this?" "I'm not doing it for you," Maya replied. "I'm doing it for the next person who cannot afford to be left helpless." Grant nodded slowly. "That's who the work should be for." Maya turned toward the door. There was no hug, no friendship, no easy forgiveness. But outside, Gray waited beside his motorcycle, and Maya felt lighter than she had in months. Grant had tried to take away her ability to stand. Charles had tried to take away her future. Neither of them succeeded. Because in the end, Maya did not need their apology to become free. She needed her voice, her work, and her right to choose what came next.